Hello. So, allow me to introduce our fabulous panel on communicating the SDGs, a universal agenda. We will also have Slido in this session, so keep Slidoing, and if we have time, we're going to try to do that at the end. So, it's with great pleasure that I'd like to invite our four seated guests from left to right. Christina Gallek, the Undersecretary General for Communications and Public Information at the UN. Carola Rambula, International Affairs Consultant and My World Partner in Mexico. Jakob Trollbeck, founder of the new division by Trollbeck and Company. And Dr. Tani Lanier, Executive Director of Impact 2030. So first, Christina, your department at the UN led the huge communication campaign around the SDGs, which we are all very familiar with, including the incredible colorful icons for the goals. But it would be great to hear how this all came about, the challenges you faced, and the impact that communicating the goals has had, particularly at the national level.
Good. Thank you very much for inviting me, and let me just say how inspirational Yukumi have been. And I think that type of inspiration is proportionate to the challenges and the engagement that the adoption of the agenda, the SDGs agenda, brought to all of us in September 2015. So the fact of having 193 member states agreeing in the middle of so many crises and difficulties and complex situations and tragedies, it is fantastic. So I think it really brought all of us inspiration. And myself and my team, we were lucky because we were given this treasure that is going to help transform the world. And we were told, okay, go out and communicate it. So it's like if you are being given something absolutely phenomenal. So first thing, what we did is we got ready for it. If you have a challenge, you prepare, and then you engage as many people as possible. We got ready for it, and to start with the visuals. And I think, Jacob, you can talk a lot about that. You know, this is the will of the world. This is the will of the prosperity of the world. This is the will of the young people. So we got together, all of us, behind superb visuals. Second thing that we did is try to simplify the most complex, the most challenging, the most difficult agenda that the humanity has given itself in very simple messages. But we shouldn't fool ourselves unless we go to the details and we leverage each and every goal and each and every target. We will not be able to truly transform it. So the simplicity is just an excuse for embracement. It's just an excuse and a fantastic tool to reach out. That was very, very significant, and it helps us to get together. You know, all of us, we have the pin, all of us will recognize the icons, and it brings us together. But we all know that behind those simple figures, those simple icons, there is a lot of work from everybody. And the third thing we did is we look for partners, because this agenda will not be implemented unless everybody is on board. And who are our key partners? Well, first of all, the whole UN system that has to have the buy-in. Second of all, of course, the governments, because they will have to take lots of decisions, laws. They'll have to take administrative orders. They'll really have to start deciding what to do and doing quickly, not waiting until 2029. And most important, I think the most important of all, was the partnerships outside the government and with all the organizations that will really push those that take decisions to actions. And we went to the private sector, lots of good news from the private sector. we went to the civil society. We had just a very engaging conversation that we heard about how the civil society feels part of this project. So now with the embracement of everybody, I think we can really say that we have the basics for a major movement. But it's very hard. You know that from the complex media environment to the fact that the world is full of sad news, to the fact that seeing a process being implemented and being communicated, which is long, is hard, because we see the improvements just on a very small scale. But I think we have done quite a lot. Of this year and a half that we have been working on the SDGs a little bit more, I think we realize that we have to have two streams of action. One, very strategic, you know, at the UN level, with the governments, and going local. We need all sorts of local action. And that means a lot of local communication, a lot of mobilization to the individuals that makes things happen, but more important, of individuals that force those that take the decisions to make it happen. So I think we are quite in a good starting point. We should not relent. I think it is going to be long and hard, and we have to ensure that we put together all the necessary mechanisms so that everybody is accountable. A lot of this process is accountability, and accountability means a lot of communications, a lot of pressuring those that on a constant basis have the upper hand. So thank you very much for having me here.
Thank you. And I think, Jakob, we can actually go to you next, because Christina mentioned these superb visuals. I mean, Christina gave me my first SDG pin, in fact, and at that time it was a huge deal because there were very few, and people were geeked about those things. So your team did the design work and came up with these incredible visuals, and it'd be wonderful to hear how that happened and how, in particular, you thought through making it appeal to the widest group possible, to the most people.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is this on? Yeah.
It's free range, so you can get up if you want. Go.
Oh, stretch.
Yeah.
And fantastic. Great to be here. Thank you, and thank Christina for all the good collaborations that we've had. So I think I have some slides. Are they coming up?
The clicker's right to your right there.
And there you go.
You can see
it. And I have it there. Now I'm all settled in.
State of the art.
Yeah. So I'm going to talk a little bit just quickly about what we've done and how we're thinking about communication and design in this field. So information is not communication. I could probably stop there, because that's the most important thing to know whenever you talk about something. And this is the proof of that. This is the icons. So this is the email that I got in December of 2014, and Richard Curtis said, "Can you do something with this?" So we started to think about it, and to communicate, you have to connect. So you have to connect with people, and in order to connect, you have to understand other people's situations, and this doesn't mean that you have to agree, but you have to understand the situation that other people are sitting in. So in case you don't understand, there's no way to get any activation, no one to care. So what we were thinking, we would transform the icons, and the whole idea of the short names for them was just that I wanted to work with one of my favorite designers, Christina Rygg, who is start to think about it. And it was too complex. So I was like, I'm going to shorten this goals down. So I started to write down all of these short names. And actually, I think that 9 of them made it all the way through the end from that first round. Then the rest were a completely different story. There were a lot of negotiations about them. But the idea was anyway that instead of saying end poverty, we would say no poverty. We would say that this is the goal, this is where we want to be in 15 years. So that was the whole idea, to get people to act. So we wanted to give it color, we wanted to give people icons, we wanted to give people something to rally around. And we also, this is the one part of my presentation that's a little bit controversial, we've been saying that this should be called the global goals because we think that that's something that's maybe a little bit better than just the SDGs when it comes to engaging people. But I'm completely in favor of us using this sort of code language, which is a lot of acronyms, and talking about all of these organizations and groups as the DPIs and the SDGs and stuff. But when we're going to talk with people on the outside, we need to connect with them. And this is something that we were, when we're talking like human beings, this is really what this is about. So what we did with, in order to rally people is that we took all of the goals and actually in numerical order and said, can we write something about it that's going to inspire people? Because all action is emotional. So we came up with sort of a manifesto of sorts, which is something like this. Imagine a world where there's no poverty and zero hunger. We have good health and well-being, quality education, and full gender equality everywhere. There's clean water and sanitation for everyone. Affordable and clean energy has helped to create decent work and economic growth. Our prosperity is fueled by investments in industry, innovation, and infrastructure, and that has helped us to reduce inequalities. We live in sustainable cities and communities, and responsible consumption and production is healing our world. Climate action has capped the warming of the planet, and we have flourishing life below water and abundant, diverse life on land. We enjoy peace and justice through strong institutions, and we have built long-term partnerships for the goals. So I'm going to wrap this up with what we're doing now, because global problems often are the result of local problems, have local solutions. So we've started to look at what we can do after this, which is, of course, targets. And here we go. This is déjà vu. Here are the targets for goal 14. So, and there's so much confusion about this, and we've been talking about 169 targets for a very long time. There isn't 169 targets. There's actually 126 targets, and then there's 43 methods of implementation. This took me a while to understand why some had dot number and some had letters instead. So what we want to do is to create a simpler way to look at this, because these are just work in progress. But we believe that it's easier to say that you're working with I think that what we try to do is to connect local communities, and we're working in Stockholm now a lot with corporations and with the Swedish government to make people to line up here. And here is like really, really early ideas of how these targets can also be represented when we're talking about marine pollution, ocean acidity.
was like, Mom, you have to memorize those. Now she knows them. Now she knows what they are, what they're useful for, and what's her role in that sense. The second one is to tell my mom. I tell my mom, Mom, go and tell your friends about this and show them the wonderful squares that you created. And that has worked very well because she also created a network of people who are telling others about the SDGs, which I consider the world's biggest promise for me. And I take that very seriously because I was involved in the process. And thanks to the wonderful openness of the SDG Action Campaign, to Mitchell, Christine, and everyone who's putting all of this together. And the second step is go to your community. As a volunteer, we call them ambassadors. Take the message out there. Why is this useful? Why we need this? And we have all of these wonderful people, like going, for example, in the state of Nuevo León right there, to very, very vulnerable communities, taking the squares and telling them, you have a role in this. And this is also your agenda. And the third and most important thing for us is to challenge power, as it was mentioned yesterday, to make a lot of noise at the community and citizen level, and tag your world leaders on Twitter and tell them what you're doing. We are one of the most annoying, I think, accounts on SDG-related stuff, because we're tagging Helen Clark all the time, we're tagging Antonio Gutierrez, we're tagging all the UN officials, we're tagging all our governors, and we're just making sure that they know that we're taking action on the SDGs. So with these three things principles that we have in My World Mexico, we've been able to impact the lives of at least 30,000 people in a 6-month period in most of the states in Mexico. And our network is growing, and people are very, very excited about what we're doing. They've created games, they have fairs, they're doing all the conferences. We try them to just take the word out there. And one of the important things that we're also doing is working with the My World survey, which allow us to know how many people actually know about the SDGs. So from the 30,000 offline ballots that we were able to collect, at least 83% of those people are telling us they didn't know about the SDGs. So we can start from there. Telling them why is this the world's biggest problem, especially because we have an environmental crisis. We're living in a world who's actually very clear that we're seeing these changes. At least that's what we're witnessing in Mexico. So I tell them to memorize the SDGs. I tell them to see themselves as part of this whole process, and it's working well for them. And it's interesting to see that we're taking seriously, yes, this is volunteer action, but we're very focused on also indicators. We're focused on making our job very seriously, and we report everything. We take pictures of absolutely everything we're doing, and we're making sure that these goals are not only achieved, but they're successfully achieved. And for that, and I speak on behalf of my generation, I'm so proud that many young people are in the room, nothing against older people, but this is a project that has been by young leaders, especially women, and I think that it will continue to grow. But you have to look at what we're doing. And taking the fact that a lot of UN high-level officials are here, please have a look at what's happening in the ground, because there are people out there who still believe a lot in the work of the UN. It's not a club of friends, perhaps some sections might be, but people out there still believe in the dream of the UN, of achieving and promoting peace, of having a sustainable environment, of all the wonderful missions that the UN established since 1945. And take advantage of that. And have a look at us and what we're doing, how we're communicating this. And we're going to continue to work in that. And I make the same invitation for people in the room. My World, it took place in Mexico just like that, but it's very replicable everywhere. So we're very proud of what we're doing. And for us, this has been an amazing journey so far for the last 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you. And it's amazing to hear about work on the ground. And the My World survey actually still lives at myworld2030.org. So worth checking out, and continues to be, I think, a pretty formidable tool for communicating the SDGs. And last but not least Tawny Lanier, as Executive Director of Impact 2030, you're working with the private sector. And that's sort of not the last piece, but another important piece in this conversation. How do we communicate to the private sector about this? How do we get businesses not just excited, but doing the work as well? And maybe you could share a success story with us, something that'll give us a bit of insight into what's working and some optimism.
Thank you, Nadira.
You're welcome.
Yes, I work with corporates, looking at specifically corporate volunteering and how it works and supports the communities where the corporates live and breathe. We heard the call from Ban Ki-moon and saying that the private sector needs to be part of our chorus to address the SDGs. And specifically, he focused on volunteering, that volunteering is one element that needs to be added to the mix to make sure that the SDGs are effectively and positively addressed. And the corporates heard that, and that's where Impact 2030 actually comes from, is looking specifically at corporate volunteering and how it addresses the SDGs. So when we talk about communication, and I have to say that I have been in rapt attention to all three of you of how things have evolved and what you're doing on the ground and how you got actually these icons so people understand immediately. I'd like to focus on something maybe that we're talking about external communication. And in corporates, it's very important, the internal communications, the business advocacy internally about what do the SDGs actually mean for the company, and specifically for corporate volunteering, that they are then recognized as an area within the company that can add value to the bottom line, but also can be seen as ambassadors and advocates within their communities. And the companies that have joined us have actually said the SDGs are for us the framework. I personally see the SDGs not only as a framework, but the strategy for the world. How can we take this strategy forward? So I'm going to talk specifically about how these icons are just such a powerful tool for internal advocacy for the corporate volunteering that individuals within the corporate, they're trying to raise it to the level for the CEOs. And in a couple of our companies that have actually talked to their CEOs about what they're doing, the CEOs and said, I didn't realize what the heck you were doing. We had that, it's great, but we don't know what you're doing. And when they bring up one of the icons and say, this is actually one of our business missions to address health and well-being if you're GSK, or infrastructures if you're SAP, the CEO then goes, now I get it. Now I get it, because A, it's incredibly simple. I like the fact that we're sitting in this room and sometimes complex things happened in this room, but that we're trying to make it even simpler. Even Jakob had this little button here. I see the button. I don't know if anybody's seen it. It's like back and next. How simple can you get? And I think that's really the beauty of the SDGs, is it makes it incredibly simple. So when you are talking about business advocacy internally, to make it simple so everyone, your peers, the people that report directly to you, but also when you're trying to manage upwards, to let the senior managers know exactly what you're doing and how you're making a difference. This is an incredibly powerful tool to make that happen. So you asked me about how communication externally, and I'd just like to focus on the internal, because we have actually experts here about what happens externally. And I can only bring actually the examples that we have from the corporate sector, saying we use these in order to make sure that internally we are aligned with the SDGs, but that we can also make sure that the company, when the companies are looking at their business mission, their business goals, their vision, it can be aligned along the SDGs, one or more. Because what also the beauty of this is that, different from the MDGs, corporates actually saw with the MDGs, we have to either talk about all of them or we talk about none of them. Mm-hmm. And what was happening is that they were talking about none of them. With the SDGs, they can pick and choose where they can actually, from a corporate perspective, bring value and can then talk about that specific thing. So one of our partners is GSK, and they are just all over the place when it comes to health and well-being, because that aligns with their business mission. Late last year, actually, another partner that we have is Pfizer. And I don't know who was in New York at that time late last year, but their whole building on 42nd Street and Lexington or 2nd Avenue was covered in the SDGs. Did you guys see that? It was fantastic, amazing. I mean, I was walking around taking selfies, look at this, isn't this great? But once again, it's communicating what can be a very complex issue. Simply, internally, it can also be an advocacy tool for those that are doing some really, really great work within their communities through their corporate volunteering work.
That's wonderful to hear. One of the questions that came up last night, and I would love to just pose this to you quickly, because you've had this experience, is what incentivizes companies to do this from a business perspective. So you are working with partners who have made this a part of their mission, and what are the rewards you see for them, and what keeps them coming back and even engaging other corporates in this mission?
I have to give a little disclaimer, is that before I came to work for Impact 2030, I was an investment banker. I did global trends impact investing. So whenever people ask me these questions, I immediately go back to that banker brain. But you know, corporations, they are driven by their financial bottom line. And if they can put together a message that goes to the SDGs but has a financial benefit for them, then suddenly hearts are changed, behaviors changed, and corporates don't see this as something that's extra to do. They can see this as, no, this is aligns with what we're doing as a company. GSK, Pfizer, it's about health and well-being, completely easy to talk about. And then they have an immediate impact actually on their financial bottom line. So it's not about just doing good, but it's understanding their mission and doing their mission better and communicating that better.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Can I,
Yeah.
Can I add something on the corporate side? I have been 2 days in Barcelona, which is a great place, not only because it's my home city, but because there was the meeting of the Mobile World Congress. I guess a lot of you know what this place is, which is the biggest gathering in the world of all the industry related to connectivity, to the corporates that are the biggest providers of connections, and to everybody that has a business to do, from Hewlett-Packard to the main communications companies. And I think this is the industry, the private sector, collectively, that has embraced in a more profound way the Sustainable Development Goals. You'd hear some of the CEOs of the great corporations that provide the networks, from Korea Telecoms to Telio to others that just are producing computers, and you'd think they were government officials in charge of the development sectors. It was such a fantastic experience. And I wonder if our colleagues can show the app that GSMA, which is the organization that gathers together these corporations, has done, which is an application that you just download, SDGs Action, which not only informs about news on the sector, on what happens in all the sustainable development world, but also engages and puts people to do things, mobilizes, goes local. And this app, I hope colleagues can show it in the screen. This app is in, oh, this is something else, which I want to show.
In the booth, not this yet. But if you have time, maybe the app is called SDG Action.
Yes.
That's what Christina's talking about.
And it is in English. It's going to be in, it's already in Spanish as well, in French, and it's going to be in Russian, Chinese, Arabic. So it really provides a tremendous tool for connectivity. And I think there are so many sectors of the economy that are eager to jump, and not just for corporate social responsibility, but because it is the right business model, the right business model, which I think it is going to be the tremendous jump that the sustainable development implementation process is going to make when it is not just to do good, but it is because it's to do the right thing. And we are getting there. It's hard. As I said, this sector has been critical in being the first one embracing the sustainable development, but we see more coming. And it is going to be through our advocacy that we are going to get many more corporations and businesses, and then local businesses embracing the good of the sustainable development goals.
Because it makes sense, right? Like that's the bottom line here.
And it makes business.
Yeah.
It makes sense and it makes business.
So to just underscore what Christina was saying about the app, it's an app called SDG Action that you can download and will give you updates and sort of keep you in the loop about what's happening around this.
That was the app video.
Oh, that was the app video.
That was the app. Can we show it? Yes. Yes.
Oh, you should have said yeah. Actually, Booth, you were right on track.
Can I add something? At the GSMA event in Barcelona, we even did have a game like the Pokemon. So participants were chasing the goals all over. So wherever you were close to a place where there was a poster of the goal with the implementation, your app was signaling to you. So at the end of the day, what we did is those that had been able to catch all the 17, they went on a draw and they got a prize. So we got a lot of young people very engaged. So the imagination that big industries are able to put into our promotion has no limits. And I think we have to tap on them.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. So there should be 100 downloads of this app in the next 30 minutes. And just quickly, and lastly, from Slido, I think this kind of is a perfect note to end on. We'd love to hear what's happening next with communicating this agenda. But the number one question on Slido, as you can see, is that in many countries the SDGs are seen as an aspirational or naive vision of the left wing, which I am shocked to hear because they're pretty straightforward, right? But it's true. So what narrative do we need to change that perception? And is that something you're taking into account, how we really mainstream this, as Dr. Dietrich said yesterday, as many of you heard, so that the next wave of the SDGs isn't seen as something that's esoteric and, you know, for all us touchy-feelies, but rather about this being the world's agenda, the people's agenda, truly. I see everybody got excited, so why don't we start here, and then Christina, if we can end with you.
You know, I really think that transformational change requires a multi-stakeholder approach. And companies, they like change because it's business opportunities for them. And I think if the SDGs, for me, and the changes that it implies is good for business, because as we move forward and there will be a zero hunger, well, what does that mean from a business perspective? And companies are always looking for new opportunities, new business opportunities, et cetera. Because I worked in global trends before I came here, you know, demographics are changing, companies are taking advantage of that, and it's from a purely business perspective. But, you know, if we move in the right direction, as Kumi said, when it comes to metrics, if you're moving in the right direction, you kind of recognize it because those things, you're rewarded. And actually, if businesses are rewarded for moving in the right direction, I think this is one way that they can do that.
I don't really know what to say more than that in this case, of course, the left wing stands in that case for sanity. So if this is
The facts are left wing.
If this is a plan of sanity, then let people say that, well, we think so. I mean, it's a very difficult time in the world because we hear so much nonsense, and I think we just have to not listen to that and keep on working. And I think that, I mean, we're working a lot with corporations because we believe that they are much faster at seeing opportunities where other people, you know, every problem we have should be an opportunity to solve, and tremendous business opportunities. So the idea of making money on making the world a better place is very appealing. At the same time, that has to be driven by a really wide public, the general public, just being engaged and demanding of corporations to stop polluting, to stop, you know, doing everything that's bad for environment or for social equality for women. So I think that we have to. I love the conversations about what corporations are doing because it's essential. But I also think that it really needs to come from the bottom, from the grassroots. So that's why the communication becomes really, really simple, important that it's simple. And that's why we shouldn't listen to Donald Trump.
I mean, in my experience, for example, it's not only that people see it as a left-wing narrative, but also as an imposition sometimes, because this comes from a global process. So what we do a lot in our team, when we encounter all of these comments or all of these different visions, sometimes people are a little bit reluctant to cooperate or to understand the SDGs, is just to identify the role that they play in development, no matter how small or big they are as an organization, especially with civil society in Mexico. And when we identify the role that they have in development, we try to include them within the SDG scenario, and then they get it. And then they see it as they have a role to play in that sense. So that changes a little bit, but it's a very challenging educational problem that we're facing constantly, and to put this global agenda at the very, very local level.
Give people ownership.
Exactly.
Of it, yeah.
People have to own the agenda and believe that they take a part in the process. And the reporting mechanisms should also be diverse. It's not only the states or member states of the UN who constructed this agenda, and that's the beauty of it, because it was like a shared responsibility. In the case of my states, for example, I'm going to defend the fact that 400,000 people participated, at least in the My World survey. So they were part of that. Mm-hmm. So it's a matter of ownership and educational process that I think it's going to change that vision of both imposition or left-wing or aspirational.
Thank you. And a final word from you,
Well,
Christine.
I think that aspirational, social, economic, and environmental justice, they are what they are. They are progressive. They are processes that will make all of us change. So right-wing, left-wing, they are terminologies that don't belong to the sustainability that we are talking about. So I think we have to move on other type of terminologies, which are the ones that embrace everybody and give a space to everybody. And I would like to end up with, if we have 2 more minutes, with the future, which is the young people. We have talked about corporations and being part of the communications, governments and or NGOs, but in terms of a target audience, the youth are the ones that are our primary source, and this is so exciting to see so many of them here. And one example of the communications tools that we have developed for them, I don't know if the colleagues can show it now, is just a rap song precisely to engage the young generations. I wonder whether it can, we still have 2 more minutes, and this is just one example. We have so many of others, but this is just one. Yes? Ready? Okay.
This is our final note. Get excited.
Nations is an organization with goals of peace and sustainable development around the world. Their mission is huge, but we're breaking it down in 2 minutes. 17 sustainable development goals. Let's get to them, cause the more you know. Look, in some corners of the world today, people are living on $1 a day. Hey, that's not how it ought to be. So goal 1, eliminate poverty. And goal 2, root out hunger across the globe. There's 800 million people hungry if you want to know. Number 3 is health and well-being, and getting people the health care that they need in. Learning in school are the hard to go for. Education opens up minds and doors. Goal number 5 is empower girls and women so they can have the same rights that men are given. Number 6, people need water that's clean. Poor sanitation can spread disease. Carbon-free energy is goal number 7, and how to achieve it is a question that's pressing. But if we put our minds together and work hard, we can find a solution, I'm guessing. 17 sustainable development goals to improve life all around the globe. Protecting human health and the environment. Whatever bed we make, we gon' have to lie in it. 17 sustainable development goals to improve life all around the globe. Protecting human health and the environment. Whatever bed we make, we gon' have to lie in it. Now imagine that you work all day for no pay. Economic growth and decent work is goal 8. Goal number 9 is to foster innovation in infrastructure and industrialization. Goal number 10, inequality reduction. 11 is sustainable city construction. 12, well, that's sustainable consumption, so what we use matches up with production. Goal 13 calls for urgent action to combat climate change, cause we know it's happening. 14, protect life under seas. 15, protect life on land. Goal 16 is for peace and justice. All over the planet, they're in high demand. And the final goal, number 17, is the critical factor, the heart of the machine. It's to strengthen the way we achieve these goals of sustainable development around the globe. Yo, 17 sustainable development goals to improve life all around the globe. Protecting human health and the environment. Whatever bed we make, we gon' have to lie in it. 17 sustainable development goals to improve life all around the globe. Protecting human health and the environment. Whatever bed we make, we gon' have to lie in it.
Good, right?
Thank you so much.
You should have seen a couple of rappers at the GA Hall singing and dancing on International Peace Day and playing the music. It was super exciting. So
Christina is clearly very excited.
yes, because of course this is just a mobilization tool, but it's a good one.
It's wonderful. I mean, anytime we see Yo in a UN video, I think that is a historic moment, is it not? Thank you so much to our entire panel. Thank you. I'll see you.